Hi, welcome to my class on youth culture and suicide. This is a big topic for me and this area where I'm located lately, since we've had actually a couple teens commit suicide this last year during the school year. So I knew this was an important class that needed to be talked about. So let's dive right in. Again, if you missed my last webinar, a little about me. I'm a certified family life educator. I graduated from Concordia University in 2018, and my focus is actually youth ministry. But I deal with families and people of all ages. So I'm able to teach these classes about different things. But this works for me with youth ministry because seeing the suicides in our own society and own community even really affects the youth that I work with. So this is an important topic to us. So the goals of this class are to know the signs of suicide, how to help someone who wants to commit suicide, and so that you feel confident in seeing the signs and to get the help that you need calmly. So whether it be for you or for somebody you know, so you can get them help in a calm fashion. Again, being calm is very important. If you make them feel rushed or anything like that, they might get tense. They might even do something bad quicker. They might, do something that ends their life. So you have to be careful and you need to be calm. Again, I just like to warn that some of these things can be sad. These are real personal stories from teens who have attempted suicide. There's only 2, so bear with me. So the first one, they're all by anonymous people, just from somebody they call themselves Rat Teeth, just to keep their identity safe. But this person's story is they attempted to OD with pills and a half gallon of vodka, apparently while they were blacked out, but not yet unconscious. They called their mother to apologize and say goodbye. The mother called 911 and they kicked the door down. And she woke up in the ICU the next day, completely distorted and still hallucinating with tubes in her. Once they came to their senses, she felt worse about what she had done. The feeling after a failed suicide attempt had to be the lowest that you can get. Luckily, she was in a hospital for long enough to stabilize on some medication and learn to deal with depression better, which is a very, very good thing. Glad that her mother called right away, and glad that they got her a treatment plan that worked long enough while she was in the hospital, so her chances of survival are better. But the biggest point is that the feeling after a failed suicide attempt has to be the lowest you can get. For many teens, this is something that they see that they need to do, and not actually being successful in it can make them feel like they're not even good at that. Another boy named Thomas, we'll call him Thomas anyways, he tried to kill himself with sleeping pills, and when he awoke, his wrists were handcuffed to a hospital bed. He asked the cops about his rights. Well, the nurses inserted a catheter because he kept urinating on himself. Technically, he didn't need to be handcuffed as he hadn't committed a crime, but according to the officers, he kept tearing out his IV. It gets fuzzy after that for him, but he does remember doing intake interviews with the psychiatrists at the hospital just before dawn. The next thing he remembers is the sight of his mother walking into the room and both of them collapsing into tears at the sight of each other. That moment will live with him for the rest of his life. So the biggest point here in this story is on the line. The next thing I remember is the sight of my mother walking in the room and both of us collapsing in tears at the sight of each other. This is a very big one. Many teens who commit suicide or try to commit suicide do not think about the person that they are affecting. They think about themselves and their struggles. They do not think about their families or the way this will affect their family or friends' lives. So, this child who attempted suicide and was unsuccessful um, got to see his mother's reaction and got to see the tears and the torn heart that she had, and it gave him a new insight. So, again, this is a problem. Something like suicide should not be in kids' minds, especially the way it is today. Suicide is not an answer. It just seems to move pain from one person to another, or one person to multiple. Um, so, there are ways that we can help. So, first of all, what is suicide? Suicide is ending your own life. It is it is sometimes a way for people to escape pain or suffering. And when somebody ends their own life, we say they died by suicide. A suicide attempt, on the other hand, means that somebody tried to end their life but did not die. The stories we just heard were both suicide attempt stories. I have personally known people that have committed suicide and who have attempted to or attempted to suicide. Um, but the way that we talk about it, we need to be clear if it's a suicide or a suicide attempt, as they are different. One person dies, the other person is still alive. Some possible signs of somebody who might commit a suicide, but doesn't mean all that I will list are all the signs. There could be more that are on the list, and some of these signs may not be present in the person that you know. Um, but the most popular or well known signs of somebody who might commit suicide are that the person talks about wanting to kill themselves, the person uses drug or alcohol more than usual, the person says that they have no reason to live, the person seems very scared or worried about something in their life. They say that they feel like there's no way out of a situation, that they can't think of another way. This is the only explanation that they have. Um, the person cannot see hope for the future. The person does not want to spend time with others. The person has a hard time controlling their anger. The person does things that might be dangerous and does not think about what might happen to them, or the person's mood changes in a big way. Again, not all of these mean that somebody may commit suicide. Um, for example, if a person does not want to spend time with others, that doesn't mean they are suicidal. That just means that could mean that they just like to be alone, or they're very introverted person and they're just not big into big groups or different things like that. But if multiple of these are happening, you need to start that conversation for sure, um, and even start it before, because this is something that it needs to be taken very seriously. So, some factors that may lead to suicide are mental illnesses such as depression, bipolar disorder, etc., um, substance abuse, bullying, family history of suicide, history of being or witnessing abuse, being diagnosed with a serious medical condition, or being socially isolated. So, all of these are the most common. Again, there could be other factors that may be included, but you know, the ones we see the most are the mental illnesses such as depression, bipolar disorder, etc. Lots of mental illnesses seem to have that as um, factors that might lead to suicide. A lot of mental illnesses are involved in that. Um, Bullying is another huge one. A lot of our kids nowadays commit suicide from bullying. Um, it is something that should not be taken lightly. It is something that should really be looked into, as that is a problem. Um, Next, or the family history of suicide is also an important one. If somebody in some family commits suicide, the teen may see that, and when he gets a little older, or when he's depressed or sad or getting bullied, he will think of suicide first. He has firsthand experience with suicide, and he'll know, like, oh, somebody I know did this and it worked. It got them out of this. Um, so it'll be something that they are very, very aware of in a way that most kids shouldn't be. And a lot of times, being diagnosed with a serious medical condition is the same way. If they get information that they have a serious medical condition, or that they're very, very sick, or just different things, many people will choose suicide as a way to not have to deal with pain, if it's a painful condition, or they can just, most of the time, they think, I'm going to die anyways, I'll just do it now where I can say goodbye and be in control. So different things like that. Some of the crazy stats that are out there about suicide that I think are most important, and eye-opening, are that suicide is the 10th leading cause of death in the U.S. 10th. That is insane. Each year, 44,965 Americans die by suicide. So that's saying every year about 45,000 people living among you in this U.S. kill themselves in some way or another. And for every suicide, 25 attempts are made. So just do that math. If you have the 44,965 people, and you say there's 25 attempts for each person, that's over 1,124,125 people that have attempted slash actually committed suicide. That is a lot of people thinking about suicide and attempting suicide. Suicide costs the U.S. $69 billion annually, in lots of different ways. Suicide was the third leading cause of death among individuals between ages of 10 and 14, and the second leading cause of death among individuals 15 to 34. So 10, it's the third leading cause of death starting at age 10. 10 to 34, it's the top 3, top 1, or top 2, top 3 leading cause of death. These kids should not be dying that. Especially, it should not be the third leading cause of death. There are other options, and we need to get these kids help. There were more than twice as many suicides at 44,000 or so in the United States as there were homicides at 17,793. So we're having more people commit suicides than there are homicides in the year. That's not okay. People shouldn't be harming themselves in this way. Some more stats. This first stat is just mind-blowing. More teenagers and young adults die from suicide more than from cancer, heart disease, AIDS, birth defects, stroke, pneumonia, influenza, and chronic lung disease combined. All of these diseases or um, problems, you don't think all of them combined kills more teens than suicide, but it does. Suicide kills more than all of them combined for teenagers and young adults, which is devastating. Each day in our nation, there are an average of 33,470 attempts by young people in high school grades, so between 9th and 12th grade. And if their percentages are additionally applied to 7th and 8th grade, the numbers would be higher. The fact that the numbers go up when applied to more grades instead of goes down is terrifying. That means that the younger kids are also attempting and are also contemplating suicides instead of just the high schoolers. And 4 out of 5 teens who attempt suicide have given clear warning signs to somebody. That is horrifying. If we can get out the warning signs to many, many people, we can get that information out. And those kids that are giving the warning signs will have the help that they need. They can get that help and they can have support, and that number can drop to 1 out of 5 or 0 out of 5 or something, so that it's not so many kids. So we need to get that out there. Some myths about suicide. Suicide is not very common. Like we mentioned, it is common. It is something that happens a lot. It is the third leading cause of death. That's not something that's not common. It is very common. The myth comes from it not being common in the fact that we don't talk about it in society much. It is not something that has been talked about until lately when um, it happens in your community or it happens to a celebrity, but we shouldn't have to have a celebrity commit suicide to have it be an important conversation. Another myth, thinking about suicide is not very common. Again, lots of people think about suicide. Just because they don't attempt or just because they aren't successful doesn't mean that they have never thought about it. Somebody who wants to die by suicide just wants to die. Again, not always true. A lot of people think of that as a way out of a tough situation or that there's no future or something, but they doesn't mean that they want to die. They just want to get out of a tough situation. People who attempt suicide just want attention. This is so surprising why people would say this. If you want attention, you are not going to attempt suicide, because if you attempt suicide, you wouldn't get the attention. You wouldn't feel it. You'd be dead. So people who attempt suicide do it because they feel like there's no other way out, or that they're alone, or that they're one of the other signs that we have talked about before. Another myth, people who survive a suicide attempt will never try to end their life again. Again, that is not true. Most of the time, people do try to attempt again, as it's still part of their psychological problem, that suicide is the only option. I know somebody who has personally attempted suicide 3 times, but now they are getting the help that they properly needed, and medication and everything. But it is not something that you can just fly by, and it's not going to be like, oh, I attempted once, I'm done. It might be for one person, but it's not going to be for another. Another one, only people with a mental illness think about suicide. Again, when we talked earlier, that's not true. People who are bullied or different things like that, serious medical conditions, or isolated, or have a family history of it, like they think about it too. And then talking about suicide will make people think about dying by suicide. This is a huge myth. If you talk about suicide and somebody commits or attempts to commit suicide, that was already in their head. The only thing that would um, help them think about dying by suicide is if you gave them ways to commit suicide. Maybe they had been thinking about suicide in general, but talking about the different ways that could give them ideas. But talking about suicide in general will not give them those ideas. A lot of the time, it's already done. So, me talking about suicide with you, I haven't mentioned different ways that people have attempted or different ways that I know that people have committed, um, because that's what they're looking for. If they are actually thinking about it, they'll go to find information about suicide to find that. But if you just give them general information about suicide or the stats or something like that, they'll not have anything more in their mind than they already have. Um, in the negative way. They'll probably get more positive about like the myths or something like that. So suicide is in today's media in a few different ways. One is this song by Logic, which that song title is the suicide hotline number. And it just, the lyrics are on the side. If you don't know the song, it starts off about a person that doesn't want to live, they just want to die, and talking about how much his life hurts and nobody cares about him. The middle paragraph or the next verse talks about how they are loved, they are cared about. Somebody cares about them. You know, they're good for who they are. They're perfect. And then the third ends with them wanting to be alive. They don't want to die. They want to live. And it goes into that. It goes through the thought processes of different people who may think of suicide, but then after talk to the suicide hotline or somebody they know or get help, end up not wanting to die anymore. They want to stay alive. So this is a really good song in relationship to that. More social media, 13 Reasons Why. Obviously, many of you probably know that it's a show on Netflix, 13 Reasons Why. And there's a book, 13 Reasons Why, that it's based off of. Both the book and the movie or TV show on Netflix bring awareness to suicide. And the book is explaining the girls that commit suicide, her 13 reasons why she commits suicide, and the people that drove her to it. It's a very, very emotional story. So if you read it or watch the show, just be prepared. And then on the other side of your screen, you see a poem, Suicide, Suicide. It's just a poem by Amber. And she just wrote this poem. This is the thoughts that go through her head or the head of somebody who is thinking about suicide. And it's heart-wrenching again. But it's real. It's real thoughts that people have. It's real thoughts that people are saying. It's real things. So the Bible on suicide. Obviously in the Bible it does not say anywhere that you shouldn't commit suicide or attempt suicide, but there is ways, if you look in the Bible, that it talks about it. So in Jeremiah 29:11, for I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. And then Psalms 55:22, cast your cares on the Lord, and he will sustain you. He will never let the righteous be shaken. Romans 8:38 and 39, for I'm convinced that neither death nor life, neither even angels nor demons, neither the present nor the future, nor any power, Neither height nor depth nor anything else in all creation will be able to separate us from the love of God that is in Christ Jesus our Lord. Exodus 20:13, you shall not murder. Psalms 118:17, I shall not die, but I shall live and recount the deeds of the Lord. And Proverbs 11:17, a man who is kind benefits himself, but a cruel man hurts himself. So all of these are good to talk to somebody who's maybe contemplating suicide or who needs help. And these are some Bible verses that you can use if you know that this will help them, or if you know that this verse could really show them that thing that they need, that hope. Treatments and resources. There are lots of different things out there. Support groups, very good one. Antidepressants, if it's something like that they need medication. The National Suicide Prevention Hotline, which is listed there. If you don't have that, I recommend putting it in your phone or writing it down. So if somebody needs it, you have it to give them right away. You don't have to look it up. And Suicide Prevention Resource Center and American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. Those are both national websites that will help with suicide and preventing suicide and different resources. They are very, very good sites, so they will be a really good resource for you. Feel free to also type in suicide or suicide support into Google. They have tons of different places locally for you, as well as these national communication websites as well. So my sources, where I got all my information from, if you need to look at a few of them or choose to, you can. And I recommend doing so. There's lots of different pieces of information that are out there. This is just what I found for this topic, for this class today, but there is more out there. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me if you can. Otherwise, find someone who you can talk to close to you, find someone you feel comfortable with. The National Suicide Prevention Hotline listed again. And the other two pictures are just pictures that really help with people who are contemplating that you are stronger than this depression, keep going, or it doesn't take your pain away, it gives it to somebody else. But always find somebody that you can talk to about this and find help if you need it. And if you know somebody who needs it, help them. Thank you.